Carolyn Doobie here. What's the play for today? Well, I'm going to be going rainbow today. Now, not just colors, but literally making a rainbow. I am going to be using a stencil to create this, and I'm going to show you how you can do that, as well as how to make rainbow drips on anything that you want without quite the uncertainty of actually dripping any paint. Well, here are the two stencils, painted rainbows and little painted rainbows. Now, the technique that I'm going to show you works with both of them. I'm going to show you on the larger one just so it's a little bit easier for you to see, but know that you can use these same techniques on both stencils. Now, sometimes when I'm doing this, I want the drips and sometimes I don't want the drips. And the cool part about this is you completely have the option. Because if you put something mask over right at the bottom of the rainbow along that straight line, you can have it without the drips. And if you don't put that there, you'll get the drips. Now, I'm going to use a piece of washi tape to create that mask right along that line so I can have a straight edge on the bottom of my rainbow. Reason why I'm using washi tape as well, because this washi tape came in an assortment and I don't really like it that much, so I don't mind using it up. The other reason is because it's a low tack tape. You want something that's not super sticky. I just need something to protect things, and I need something that is going to be able to pull off when I lift this thing up. Now, I'm going to use a cosmetic sponge here, and what I'm doing is using little itty bitty cosmetic sponges. Now, they aren't super fancy, they're just bigger ones that keep getting cut down. After I use it in a color and the paint dries, I cut off the bottom, and I end up with these little remnants by the end. Now, these little remnants are great for when I want to stencil in smaller places. Now, I'm putting the hot pink, the fuchsia right in there in the first area. The second area, I'm going to put the orange. Now, one of the tricks to doing this is to not have the exact same amounts of paint on the cosmetic sponges as I'm doing this. So sometimes the cosmetic sponge is very dry, which means there's not a lot of paint on it. And sometimes it's got a little more paint to it. That's going to give it the variation, that look that I love about this. And this is definitely one of those times when I love imperfect stenciling. I want the cosmetic sponge to show. I'm going to want paints to run together. Well, you'll see in the next step how we're going to make the paints run together. Now, if you're brand new to stenciling, you might notice that I'm going in an up and down motion as I'm pouncing with the cosmetic sponge. The reason for that is there's less chance that paint's going to run underneath if I go in an up and down motion. Now, I'd like to say that I usually do that, but, well, sometimes I just don't follow my own best advice. But then again, I don't mind if something runs underneath it, especially with this stencil and this kind of look. After all, it's very, very painterly here. And this is why it's nice to use a low tack tape for this, because now it's time to lift off the stencil. I'm going to take the tape up, it's going to pull up the stencil, and I'm going to promptly get the tape off of the stencil. There are two reasons for that. I don't want it to permanently stick there. And the other reason is I'm going to use that piece of tape right here to mask off the bottom of this so that I hold that straight line as I add more color to this. Now, of course, I could leave my rainbow just the way it is, but instead I want to fill in those white spaces. I'm going to use the cosmetic sponge, and I'm sort of eyeballing where this is going to go. I actually want colors to overlap and bump into each other. Now, if I've got a lot of paint on my cosmetic sponge, it gives me a more solid, darker look. If I have a less paint on the cosmetic sponge, it's going to give me a little bit of a ghostier, softer, subtler look. Now, when I come in with the yellow, notice how I'm not being very careful about this at all. I am going on top of some of the orange, on top of the green. I'm letting the colors overlap. Now, because yellow is so translucent, it's an easy one to do that with. It's very, very forgiving. I'm going to come in with the teal color next, and on this one, what I want to do is have it be the bridge between the purple and the green. I want some of the blue in the green, I want some of the blue in the purple. And you'll notice that I'm getting sort of a splotchy look here. I'm not getting perfectly even coverage with that teal. That's because the cosmetic sponge is pretty dry, and I want that look. I want that variation in there. I want that imperfection. What that also means is every time I use this stencil, every time I've made a rainbow with it, every one of them is a little bit different. And I think that's very fitting because to me, every rainbow is unique. Because to me, rainbows represent surviving the storm. And everybody's storm is different, and how you get through it each time is a little bit different. So I love the fact that every rainbow is unique. Yeah, I know, scientifically it's snowflakes where everyone's unique, but it's a little of that artistic license here to say that every rainbow is unique. And I'm just going to keep adding a little bit here, a little bit there, a touch of color, layering, overlapping a little bit more. I'd like to tell you that there's really some big logical reason for it, I just like playing with colors and rainbows, so I'm going to keep doing that. Once I'm ready, then I'm just going to peel up the washi tape and my rainbow is complete. Well, now let's talk about the drips here. Of course, you can do the drips right at the same time as you're doing the rainbow and have them line up right underneath your rainbow. But what I'm going to do is create a wonderful drippy top to my art journal page here. Now I'm picking and choosing which drips I want to use, and I'm going to layer a whole bunch of colors here. That way it's going to look like these random painterly drips. Now I can also flip the stencil over so that the drips look like they're coming from the other side. That way, instead of having two sets of drips, kind of like the right and left side of the rainbow here, when I flip it over, it ends up looking like I've got 4 different ones, which means I can just make it look like a whole bunch of random ones. Now here's the trick though. If you're going to use both sides of the stencil, you probably want to take a moment to wipe off any wet paint from that side of the stencil. I am not always that patient with that, and you'll see how I handle some of those little oopsies a little bit later. I'm just going to keep adding one color after another, letting them build up. And I want a variety of lengths. I want some long and some short, some here, some there, and I want to see lots of colors. Now this is where a stencil is very handy for this, because when I put my stencil down, what I can do is see what it's going to cover up. And I will tell you that I have learned this from experience, that if you stencil right on top of something else, it kind of obscures it or covers it up. So it's nice when I actually look for the white space for where I'm going to stencil so that I know what exactly I'm covering up or not covering up. And you might have also noticed that I'm picking and choosing. I'm being somewhat selective over which drips I'm going to use where and with what color. If I've got a whole lot of short drips somewhere, I might want to add something longer. And if I've got a whole lot of long drips, I might want to add something shorter. You might have also noticed that I do the trick of making the drips as long or as short as I want them to be by moving the stencil up the page. That way it makes it a little bit shorter, makes it look like I've got a whole lot of different drips there, when really I'm just working with what's on that stencil. And now begins the analytical portion of the drips. Because as I look at it, if I see that there's an area where there's a big opening that I want to fill in, if there's not enough color or I want a different color in there, size, so I'm kind of just looking at it going, what will fit where, what will fill in for the drippy look that I'm after. Now you might have also noticed in a few places there's a little bit of color transferring, smears, oops, mistakes, whatever you want to call them. Well, those things, that's happening because I'm using both sides of the stencil, I'm flipping it over without really cleaning it off very well. Okay, not cleaning it off much at all. And I'm okay with that because I'm just so impatient. I'd rather work quickly and deal with the stuff afterwards than take my time when I'm playing. Now, those little speckles of color, I can leave them there or I can cover them up. I'm going to show you a couple of ways that you can quickly cover up any of those little oopsie spots that you make when you're playing. Now, if you're enjoying seeing how I'm playing with stencils and getting tips and tricks for using them, hit that subscribe button. That way you'll know as soon as I have a new video out. Now let's deal with these oopsies. The outstanding opportunities presenting suddenly of paint that wasn't where I wanted it. I've got just a white gel pen here, and if I just color over the little spots with the gel pen, that'll cover them up. Of course, it's important that the paint is dry before you use the pen on them. Then the other thing that I might do if I've got a bunch of them, which I kind of do here, is I'm just going to grab some white paint and paint right on top of them. Well, thanks so much for joining me for today's play. If you've been enjoying this video, give it a thumbs up. And of course, hit that subscribe button for more. And yep, you bet you can find more of what I'm up to over on the blog at acolorfuljourney.com. Thanks for letting me be a part of your colorful journey.